Well, Frode, Christina, welcome to Kicking Tables. It is a pleasure to have you on. I'm excited for your game Fjordar, but why don't you tell our audience, either one of you, what is Fjordar? What kind of game is this?
Yeah, Fjordar is well, it started out when we started developing it many years ago as a typical war game. Then we wanted it changed a little bit, so now it's sort of this hybrid Euro conflict type of game that is set in the Norwegian Civil War, which is roughly 60 years after the Viking Age ended.
Okay.
And yeah, where you battle out your opponents and try to win the throne of Norway. When I say battle, you fight a bit, but it's mostly Euro-ish mechanics, I would say.
Okay. So what is you explain the board, because I think you have a really unique game board in Fjordar. Talk a little bit about the board itself and then what a typical round of play looks like.
Well, the board is a modular board that you build in the beginning of the game. So we have included like this pre-made setup, but typically in a game you set up the base tiles to begin with, and then you build the board by taking turns placing a tile in the beginning of the game. And this, well, depending on how fast the players are, this can take like 10 minutes-ish, 15 minutes maybe. And when you begin the game itself, you take turns playing until the game is over. So there's no typical round structure with phases. But in your turn, you have up to 5 phases that you go through. First, you play a movement card, which has these movement points on the top. And this determines how many movement points you get to use on your turn. Then you use those movement points to move your units around, and it has various costs in movement points if you want to move uphill or downhill and use a ship or whatever. Then there might be battle if you have moved into enemy-occupied areas, and then you do the location actions where your units function as workers doing the various actions. So the more units you have, the more actions you get to do, and that can be stuff like getting taxes, getting new units, building churches, burning churches, founding new villages, and the most important one, moving your heirs along this supply line that you build in the game. So that's so the main scoring of the game is getting these long supply lines,
Yes.
which are connected areas that you move across.
I think it's important to note that the board is a 3D board. Like you actually have cliffs and mountains you can climb up and down, which
Yes,
is very unique.
it's
Like as you're laying the tiles down, you're actually building a three-dimensional board. I think that's really awesome.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we have various colors on these terrain tiles. So we have like the dark green are at the bottom, and they get lighter and more snow covered as they near the top.
That's awesome.
That's really cool. So I'm curious, what about the Norwegian Civil War? Why did you decide to make that the backdrop of your game?
Well, it was actually just from reading a couple of books by this very good Norwegian historian called Tore Skeie, which writes really good. And when one of his books, it wasn't about the Civil War per se, but in the beginning of it, it was a lot about it. And I realized I didn't know that much about it. That it, for instance, had 22 different pretenders to the throne
Wow.
during the years it lasted. And so I thought, this sounds like a good board game. And and so I already had a game that I've been working on many years ago, which had the 3D terrain and the supply line mechanics, but it didn't have any water, any bows and fjords. So I thought, okay, maybe this can work as a Norwegian Civil War game with a lot of tweaks, of course. But
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
That was
Tico and I were talking before the show that it just kind of, it boggles my mind how a civil war could last as long as that, like 110 years. The people who started the war weren't even around when it ended. It's like, it was
no.
just like, how does something like that go on so long? Now I understand you've got a solo mode being developed as well. Can you talk about how the solo mode differs from the competitive mode?
Yeah, when you play, when you play solo, the player's turn is exactly the same as in a multiplayer or two-player game. So you basically set up the game as a two-player game, and then you have the bot setup, which is depending on your level of difficulty. The bot begins with control over different areas, like some beacons and castles and stuff like that. And the bot, the way he plays is that you have this bot deck with cards that you draw.
Okay.
And he has movement points, but he doesn't move around the same way you do as a player. But on the card it says, for instance, light a beacon, and then he will first check if he has a beacon within the range, and then the movement points works as a range within the range of his Hird unit, his leader unit, if you may. And then they will move there and do the action, and you just move him directly there, and he doesn't lay down any control cubes to take control of stuff in between. There's a different action just for doing that for him.
When you started developing the game, did you always want to have a solo mode, or is that sort of a result of the pandemic? A lot of games, people really want solo mode because everyone's been stuck at home for so long. Is the solo mode a result of that, or is that something you've always wanted to have in?
Little bit. We always thought it would be nice to have a solo mode because we saw people were asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
But we hadn't really got time to dig into it. But then it was right after Christmas this year, a friend of mine, Morten Johannes Arvik, asked me if we were interested in having a solo mode, and he would love to look at developing it. So he is the one that's been responsible for developing the solo mode.
That's awesome.
With me just giving some input here and there and testing it.
That's great.
That's really cool. So I also was reading that you guys have the regular rule set as well as a basic rule set. And what are the differences between the basic and the regular? And why would somebody choose to play the basic?
The basic is just some of the rules which have been removed. So we have taken the more core parts of the game and reduced it to the basic game. So it is more for players who are not maybe that into modern board games, or just like an easy start. So there are fewer rules to learn, basically. And
does it affect the game playtime? Does it affect like the length of the game as well?
No, not that much, because the gameplay, the length of the game is based on when you reach a certain number of victory points, 50. And that is the same in both versions.
Okay, so it's just a simplified version of the game, then, is it?
Yeah, easier rules. Well, not easier rules, but fewer rules.
Okay.
So, less to learn. And then the next time you play it, you would just add the rest of the rules if you want to.
Now, you mentioned early on that when you first started developing the game, it sounded like it might have been a completely different kind of game. How different is the game now versus when you first started? What kind of changes went through as you were working on this?
Very different. What we had, well, the first version, this was a game that I made 8 years ago.
Wow.
And it's just been lying there. And I took it up again 2 years ago when we started making Fjordar. So that game had a 3D landscape, and it had these supply lands that you built, and you move these heirs around. And it was actually this air moving mechanic that made me think that this would be ideal for the Norwegian Civil War, since it has such a focus on getting heirs for pretenders that had just recently died or maybe were about to die, so that you could get them into position to continue the fight. But the old game it had those things, but it also had more dice and tables, more think like a traditional war game. And it was fun, but it was a bit complicated when you should have combat, because then you had a lot of rules of things that could happen, and you had the movement points. They were also quite different. There was separate units points for each, no separate movement points for each units and things like that. So it has been simplified a lot, and also all the location actions, we didn't have that. It was just the route building. So now we have all like the churches that have been added, because that's an important part of the Norwegian Civil War, and the villages and things you do around there.
At what point did the 3D board aspect come into it? How did you come up with that idea of having the layered board?
That was in the very beginning, because that was in the old version. Yeah. Can't actually remember how the idea came to me, but I found this wood carver on the internet who made these wooden tiles for me, which I ordered and started playing around with them, and that was
just sort of built
how
in,
it started, I guess. Yeah.
Very cool.
So it was these hexagon wood tiles that you could, put into terrain. But of course, there were many more layers and more bigger and complicated.
Yes.
So let's talk about your campaign for a little bit. Most campaigns we see some stretch goals. Are we going to see any expansions? Possibly as stretch goals, anything like that, or is it mainly going to be sort of upgraded components, that sort of thing? What can we expect to see with those?
Maybe Kristine would like to answer that.
Yeah. We haven't planned an expansion at this time. There might come. We have talked about it, but we don't have anything concrete. So we probably won't see an expansion in the stretch goals, but we have a lot of exciting stretch goals planned. So
anything you can tease for us?
I think we'll see on again next weekend what happens.
Okay, fair,
but
fair.
Good ones, definitely.
All right, excellent. Looking forward to seeing those.
Yeah.
But one thing I can mention about expansions is that we have ideas for expansion, for having a 5 to 6 player expansion, but that won't happen in this campaign, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That will be at a later stage.
Awesome.
Yeah. Because actually the old game was also 4 up to 6 players, but we cut it down to 4. So we have tried with up to 5 and 6 players, but it became a bit too big to develop and finish at this stage.
We have really been testing the game quite a lot. There've been so many different versions of the actual game, and especially the battle system is something we have. I think we've tried almost everything there is. We're very happy with the current battle system. We've really tested it a lot and gotten really good feedbacks on how it works.
Can you just talk to the battle system for a second and just kind of talk about how the battle system works?
Yeah, it's very simple. You added the strength of all the units that are in the battle area. So you have this one unit, the Hird. He has 3 in strength. That's your leader. And then you have the Leidang, which are the conscripted soldiers, the farmer soldiers, if you will, which have 1 in strength. But they are also it will also give you support as archers if they are situated on a level that's above the battle area. So you can imagine them throwing rocks and firing arrows down in the battle. So they will then give 1 strength for each level they are above the battle area. So they can potentially add the 4 extra strength for each laydown.
So it's very strategic then, placing your units where you need for a battle.
Yeah, this bit is very tactical and is one of the things that have remained from when it was a more traditional war game. But then we also, instead of using dice to resolve combats and all these tables and stuff, we have this battle deck, which each player has 3 cards. It's a 48 card deck, where each player has 3 cards in their hand, and they play 1 card down simultaneously and reveal it.
Okay.
And then there is these symbols on these cards, which gives them a little bit of a paper, scissors, stone system. So if a player plays a card of a certain suit and the other player plays a card that beats that suit, they will get some extra swords based on that. And also, after a battle, when you have played a card, you can pay to have it lying in a table. And what it will do then is that the symbols in the left margin, which could either be strength or movement, will be carried over to later turns where you can use them in battle or movement. So by doing battle, you will get better at movement and battle. So sort of built-in experience system of becoming stronger.
Oh, very
There is
nice.
a set collection element to it. If you play the same type of cards or in the same suit, then you get more points for each battle you win. And then also in the end, you will get victory points for how many set collection elements you have of that suit.
Awesome. The game.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So this also adds this element that normally you will have lots of cards in the same suit because you will get more points in the end. But that can also be a bit predictable for the other players if you always play the same suit, and then you are easier to beat in battle.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
The game sounds amazing. I can't wait to see it. But let's do a really quick lightning round of questions. We've got 8 simple questions for each of you, just to get to know you outside of your own game, just to get to know you and your game. These are all game night or gaming related questions, just to get to know you a little bit better. So we'll go each in turn. Frode first, and then Christina. Okay, so just whatever the first thing that comes to mind for each of these questions. Your favorite classic game?
By classic, you mean like
Traditional, old,
80s,
yeah.
traditional.
Yeah.
I think that would have to be Othello.
Oh, love Othello. I grew up with that one too.
Yeah.
Christina?
I was hooked when I was 11.
Yeah, I guess the game that got me into board games is Risk. So I will have to say Risk. Yeah.
Awesome. What's your most recent game purchase?
Yesterday I got the Vienna connection in the mail from Portal Games, which I'm looking forward to play.
Does Kickstarter backing count as well? Or?
Sure.
Yeah, I backed them. There is a really cool French campaign going on now that called Ice. So
Ice.
I backed it.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, looks really cool.
Dice or cards?
Cards.
Cards.
Yeah. What's your favorite modern game?
Forbidden Stars.
Okay.
Yeah, Forbidden Stars is also one of my favorite games. Also, we play it quite a lot. I also have to say Game of Thrones, the board game, I think, yeah.
Awesome. What's your favorite game mechanic?
Push your luck.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'll have to say worker placement.
Okay. This leads right into the next one. Worker placement or area control?
Area control.
Yeah, I'm torn between the two, but I have to say worker placement.
I think so. I think Frode, you may have already answered this one. What's the last game you purchased?
Yeah, that was the Vienna connection.
Yeah. Christina, do you want to go with that Kickstarter? Is that?
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to remember which one bought so much online these days. But yeah, I think I'll just stick to my last answer.
Sure. And final one, deck builder or deck constructor?
Deck builder.
Deck builder.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's it. That's just an idea to get to know you guys outside of your own game, just to learn what kind of gamers you are. But it's been a pleasure having both of you on. Before we let you go, either one of you, give us the elevator pitch for Fjordar. Why should people back this game?
Kristine.
Okay, so Fjordar is an epic tactical strategic game for 2 to 4 players about the Norwegian Civil War that has an awesome combat system, 3D board that's modular, so you can build your own board and have unique gameplay each time you play.
That's awesome. And it comes to Kickstarter on May 28th. So everybody go check it out. There is a link in the description below to the Kickstarter. Frode, Kristine, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and good luck with the campaign.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I am Frode from Go to Pieces Games, and I hope you all will back Fjordar when it's live on Kickstarter on the 20th of May. And remember, subscribe to OMG Nexus. The link is right below here.